In the previous video in this lab, we looked at developing the Simio model of the serial manufacturing line. And so to refresh your memory, we have a system in which parts arrive at the rate of 60 per hour. They go through a machining process. 10% of the machine parts require remachining, so they are sent back to the same machine for processing. Following machining, they go through a grinding process, after which 10% are deemed bad and are disposed of, and the remaining 90% are packaged and completed. And so the model that we developed in the previous video is here. And what we plan to do in this video is take a look at the use of Simio symbols. And we're just going to touch very briefly on the use of symbols, and we'll come back to this in much more detail in the dedicated lab that discusses Simio animation. So before we get to the symbols, the first thing I want to do is go to the visibility ribbon and stop displaying the arrows on the time paths. They take up a lot of space, and well, I generally just don't like them. But anyway, you can turn them on and off easily, and you can also turn off the links and turn on the links and nodes and labels and other components. And so the visibility doesn't make things, doesn't delete things from the model, it just turns their visibility on and off. Okay, so back to symbols. And so this first topic that we're going to discuss is looking at our object instance, our part object. Something that people commonly want to do is they want to change the look of the entity as it moves through the system. So for example, we want parts to start out and when they go through the machining process, we'd like them to change color, and when they go through the grinding process, change color, and so on. Okay, so in Simio, the way we do this is by using the symbol list that's associated with every object instance. And so I'm going to click on parts, and you can see up in the, as soon as I select part, the symbol ribbon becomes active. And what I want to do is I want to just click on add additional symbol. And as soon as you do that, you see that we have an active symbol becomes 2 of 2. So if I click on the little down arrow here and expand that, you can see that there are now 2 symbols associated with the part entity, and symbol 1 is the active entity. So what I'm going to do is go zoom in a little bit and then simply change the color of that symbol by selecting color and then placing the crosshairs over the part and clicking. And so now when I look at the active symbols, you can see that I have the symbol 0 is the standard green triangle, and symbol 1 is the newly created red symbol. Note that I haven't really changed anything in my animation, so when I run my model, I still see the green animation. So creating and editing the symbol is the first step, and the second step is to tell Simio how to apply, or tell Simio which symbol to apply. So Simio sees a list of 2 possible symbols, symbol 0 and symbol 1, and if we look in the animation properties of the parts object definition, we see 2 things that are of interest to us right now. Current symbol index, which is specified as model entity.picture, and random symbol, which is set to false. So if we simply change random symbol from false to true, when we run the model, Simio will just select randomly from amongst the symbol list. We have 2 symbols on our list, so if we run long enough and watch, we should see about half the entities are green and half the entities are red. So the model entity.picture is a model entity state. We haven't really talked about model state, object state yet, but an object state is a characteristic of the object that can change during the model run. So if I go to the model window and select model entity and go to the definitions tab, the states section, you can see model picture is a state associated with the model entity whose initial value is 0. And so that's why when we run the model, if we don't have random if we have random symbol set to false, we're using model entity.picture, the entity state, to index the active symbol list. And since the value is initially set to 0, that's why we always see the green symbol being displayed as the model runs. If we want Simio to stop using symbol index 0 and start using symbol index 1, because we've said that we want the animation, the current symbol index, to be specified by model entity.picture, we simply need to assign the state model entity.picture a value of 1 at the point where we want the animation to change. So for example, if I go to machine and select the machine object, you see state assignment properties associated with the machine, and we have two different properties that are provided by the object, the on entering and the before exiting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the before exiting, and I get the little button here with the 3 dots, the ellipsis, which represents what's called a repeat group. So if I click on that, it brings up the repeat group editor. The repeat group editor lets me do, in this case, as many state assignments as I'd like to do. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on the add, and I have to fill in this basic logic section saying what state variable would I like to edit. And so I'm going to type model entity dot picture and set the value to 1. So when the entity arrives at the object, the model entity.picture value is 0, that's the default value, and when it departs the object, I'm going to set that value to 1. And when we run the model now, we expect entities that depart the machine to be red because we've set their symbol index, the symbol index, to be the value of 1. So now when entities are created, when they arrive from the source, they are green. When they are processed or when they leave the machine, they're now red. So the question is, if we want to change colors again after they leave grinding, what do we need to do? What are the steps in order to change the color a second time? Well, again, it's a two-step process. The first thing we need to do is create the additional symbol. So I'm going to click on parts, and I'm going to add an additional symbol, and we can see now that the symbol index, symbol 3 of 3 is active. So I can zoom in a little bit, and let's change the color to light blue. Click on the entity, and now we have 3 symbols, 0, 1, and 2. So that's the first step of our two-step process, to create and edit the symbol. The second step is to assign the value to model entity.picture, and if we want that to happen when they leave grinding, we simply select the grind object instance, go to state assignments, and then before exiting we add that state assignment. And so I go to the state assignment, add, and note that I can also use the selection. So I can click on the down arrow, and then I can go find model entity.picture. This time I want to set the value to 2. And so now when entities leave grinding, they should have the second index 2, or be the cyan colored entity. And finally, if we want to change the color when they leave packaging, again, a two-step process. We add the symbol, we edit the symbol, let's make it purple. You have to zoom in here, and then we assign the value as it departs packaging. So let's go back here, add, and we will say model entity dot picture, and this time it's given a value of 3. And so now we should see entities that are green, red, cyan, and purple as they depart each station. And I have to slow it down a bit to be able to see that, so let me go down to about 2. That might be a little bit too slow. Let's go to 5. We see all the red ones bunching up. There's cyan. So a red one jumped down. A red one jumped down here, and then we can see the purple ones here. So at this point, there's one minor inconsistency that we see in the colors, and that happens when we have a rework part, which we just saw. And when a part's reworked, it ends up being red, even though it hasn't finished the machining process. So it actually finished one time, but it was rerouted back. And so the reason we have that issue is because we use the machine before exiting state assignment. And so right before it exits the machine, the state index, the object state is updated, but it doesn't know where it's going to go yet. So we can modify that a couple of different ways. The easiest way now is to go to the path and go to that path state assignment, and when an entity enters the path, so the only way an entity can enter this path is if it is going to rework. So we will go on the before entering state assignments, and we'll just reset the index back to 0. So we'll do model entity, picture, and set the value back to 0. And so now when it departs the machine, it will be set to red, but in 0 simulation time, as it enters the path, it will immediately be set back to green. And so now the only parts, the only object realizations that will be red are the ones that actually depart through the good path to go to grinding. Similarly, we may want to distinguish between bad parts. We have the value index set before exiting, and so we could do the same thing here for time path 5. We could go to our part, add another symbol. Let's make this one black. It's a bad part, so we will make that one black. And so now the black colored part is symbol index 4. And we can do the same thing here on the time path 5. For the state assignment on entering, add model entity, picture, and assign the value of 4. Or was it 5? Yeah, the 5th entity, 4th index, because it's a 0 base. And so now we've fixed those two minor anomalies, and so now we have parts that start out green. When they depart successfully the machining operation, they're red. When they depart, good parts depart grinding, they are light blue or cyan. Bad parts departing are black, and good parts that leave packaging, or all the parts that leave packaging, are now purple. So let's take a minute and just talk about what actually happened here. So associated with each object instance, Simio has a symbol list. And with that symbol list, we can add symbols. So we added an active symbol multiple times. And for our case, we have 5 active symbols. Then Simio, we told we want the animation current symbol index to be defined by the state model entity.picture. So if you look at the model entity definition, there is a state called picture, and that default value is 0. And then we updated that state as the realization progressed through the model, and every time we updated the state from 0 to 1, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, and from 3 to 4, because we were using model entity.picture to specify the animation index, Simio automatically changed the animation to reflect that update. So changing what an entity looks like as it moves through the system is quite easy. We can use that same default symbol list concept with other object instances other than the model entity. So for example, I can select the machine instance, which is an instance of the server object definition, and I see the same thing in the symbol ribbon. So I can click add additional symbol, and now I have 2 symbols that are associated with the machine instance. So I'll select index 1 and then change the color to green. So let's click on the instance, and now we have 2 symbols, the gray and the green. When we run the model now, however, we see that the symbol automatically switches. So Simio is already switching that symbol index. And so let's take a look at how that happens. I'm going to stop the model, I'm going to select the machine, and I'm going to scroll down to the animation property, and have a look at the current symbol index. So this current symbol index for machine is something called machine.capacity.allocated greater than 0. And so machine.capacity.allocated returns the number of units of capacity of the machine that are currently allocated. And because we have greater than 0, what we have is a 0, 1 expression. So this expression will always resolve to either 0 or 1. It's 0 if the machine capacity allocated is 0, so if it's idle, then the return value for this expression will be 0, and so symbol 0 will be selected. If machine.capacity.allocated resolves to 1, meaning the machine's busy, then the expression greater than 0 will resolve to true, or a 1 value, and index 1 will be selected. And so that's why we don't have to actually change that value as the like we did when we did the parts. So let's take a closer look at this expression that we use for the animation. So suppose that we had used this value, machine.capacity.allocated, rather than the Boolean expression that resolved to 0 or 1. Well, in this case, it's going to be no different because it's machine.capacity.allocated will still resolve to either 0 or 1 because the capacity of the machine is set to 1. So it's the machine will either be busy or it will be idle. However, if we change the capacity of the machine to 2, meaning that this machine can simultaneously process 2 parts, now the symbol index machine.capacity.allocated will either resolve to 0, to 1, or to 2. And so in this case, when machine is processing 2 parts, as you see, we get an error saying that we have symbol index 2, but we don't have an index 2 for that symbol. So I'm going to pause the simulation, stop the model, and I can do one of two things. If I go back and switch my symbol index back to the expression that's just 0 or 1, right? So now whether this value, machine.capacity.allocated, is 1 or 2, the full expression will still resolve to 0 or 1. So we've taken out the actual number of units of capacity that are being allocated. The other alternative is to add another symbol. So I can go back and change this, and then simply go and add another symbol that represents the machine processing 3. So we'll make that light blue. And so now we have 3 symbols, gray, green, and blue. And we're using the machine capacity allocated, which will either have a value of 0, 1, or 2. And so now when we have the 2 parts being processed, we see that the third symbol, or the cyan color, becomes active. In this video, we've touched on 3 things that are fundamental to the use of Simio. The use of symbols, that in this case we had associated with the parts object instance and the machine object instance. The use of states, we looked at the model entity.picture state, and the use of expressions. So in the machine, we did some investigation of the machine.capacity.allocated. So we looked at the use of symbols, we looked at the use of object states, and we looked at the more advanced use of expressions. Now, note on all 3 of these, we've just barely touched the surface of the capabilities and usefulness of these in Simio, and we will see these much more in future videos.